most of us have probably heard that communication is like mostly nonverbal. And they're not wrong. Some numbers would say like 93% of our communication is not the words we say. That's been argued that maybe 93% is a little bit too specific of a number. That being said, nonverbal communication is immensely important to communication. In fact, it's vital to communication because that's how we communicated before there was words. We communicated with body language. We communicated with like grunts. And it's amazing that we have moved beyond the grunts. But it's also important to understand and sort of take note of nonverbal communication. So here's some things that you may have thought about, but I promise you there's things you haven't thought about in here about communication and nonverbal communication and the importance of using that effectively, because one will feed the other. So start with the hands. Open hands are more important than closed hands. What happens when I close my fists? Well, it looks like I'm ready to fight or I'm hiding something. Open hands say, hey, there's nothing here. There's no weapons. I'm not hiding anything. There's no nefarious magic tricks that are going to happen. That's why, right? Magicians do this. And so open hands show a welcoming gesture. Now it could be, hey, welcome here. It could be, yay, I'm so excited. Or it could be, I have really something important to tell you. That open sort of gesture going down actually kind of says, hey, this is important. It displays authority, but it shows a kind authority. So keep your hands open. Don't put them in your pockets. Don't hide them, because those hiding hands back in our ancestors used to, when, you know, they would come and they would actually say, hey, I've got nothing to hide. And look, there's no weapons. And I'm actually exposing my organs because I also trust that you're not going to hurt me too. So this is a really important open-handed and open-bodied gesture for our hands to remain open when we're communicating. Here's the other one, feet. Depending on the situation, you may not want to stand directly in front of somebody if it's a one-on-one conversation. You might want to pivot a little bit out to make it a little bit softer. Sometimes if you're directly in front of somebody, that can seem intimidating, especially if you're in a little bit of a close proximity. But if you open your feet just slightly, it shows a little bit more welcoming and a little bit less threatening, especially if it's somebody that you're first meeting and you're just trying to sort of feel each other out a little bit and getting to know one another. You don't want to come across too strong or too imposing. That the feet directly at them could actually do that. Could make somebody feel a little bit more standoffish. So keep the feet a little bit open. The other thing you want to be careful with, and I've noticed this with parents who have kids, is that you kind of get this rocking, right? And the feet get a little happy because there's energy, and then there's no kid, but you're still rocking. Right? And so this can still happen as well. Be aware of the rocking feet. Keep your feet firm, but keep them open a little bit. Next one is voice. Now this is the words we say, but also how we say it. And it's interesting when you talk, and I always do, sometimes I get really excited and I talk really fast and my voice register gets really high because I get really excited about talking about different things like communication. But really, when we talk slower, and when we have that steady lower register, that anybody, no matter what voice you have, even if it's a high-pitched voice, for you, you can lower it just a little bit so that sounds kind of resonates from your chest and not your throat. That exudes confidence. You can still have energy, you can still have inflection, but you want to keep that register a little bit down here. Not always, because variety is going to be very important, but you want to keep it down here because that exudes or shows authority. Now we've covered hands, we've covered feet, we've covered voice. Now there's also the importance of pausing. When we pause, it actually allows us to breathe and refocus. It allows the other person to reflect, to respond, if you want them to respond or if they're invited to respond. It allows the scene of what you're sharing or the subject of what you're sharing to change and for the listener to be able to follow along. And as I heard at a leadership communication retreat I was just at, somebody just sort of inadvertently said it. They said, I realized that the communication happens during the pause. I'm like, oh, that's so good. That's so good, because that kind of reflects back to that nonverbal communication and how much is not being said, because that gives everybody a time to kind of soak in what has been said. Now, if you don't want to be interrupted, then you can pause at a different time than seems natural. And you can still allow that sort of lingering ... that you see in books to go, ooh, something's next. And then you can continue. So the pausing is really important, and you actually play with pausing a little bit and make sure that it's not predictable. Sometimes you can use unpredictable pauses, which can be really important. And then lastly is dress. If you're in a space, whether you're at work or at a networking event, and you want to communicate confidence or clarity or whatever it might be, you want to dress a little bit more. You don't want to dress up too much more, because then you look maybe like, why is that person, in a three-piece suit and we're all in like sandals? Okay. But if you do a little bit more, then it sort of shows that you understand the culture, but that also you're taking it seriously. So I always want to go a little bit step higher than what's expected in dress. Same thing can be at work, same thing can be at parties, networking events, things like that. Whatever the dress code is, don't go too far up, but just go a little bit higher than what's expected, because then you look like you fit in, but it also looks like you created intention around it, and it also looks like you are confident and you're dressing with clarity and making yourself sort of stand out, but not stand out too much. Now, if we're aware of all of these things, hands, feet, voice, pause, and dress, and we can just do these little things, then what we say, the words we actually say, become that much more powerful, because the nonverbals are congruent with the things that we're saying. And as we do these other things, it influences the words that we do say, which actually creates kind of a cycle of getting better and better at communication, because the nonverbal influences the verbal and vice versa. And I'm going to pause here for a really long time for dramatic effect. And I'm still pausing for dramatic effect. And now I'm done pausing.